Jake Baird.
Andrew Jones.
How the hell
Andrew
are
Johnson.
you? Johnson. Oh my god. Out of all the names that they could confuse at high school, be fucking Jones. I still
Yeah.
can't understand that.
Yeah. I
Drives me
mean, I guess it
nuts.
makes sense that they would pick a real name if they were going to fuck
You,
your name up.
you know what's funny is I literally threw away all the honor rolls and everything that I got except for that one because I just thought it was just a novelty.
Yeah.
Dude, you're really growing out the beard, man. Jesus Christ.
So I'm selling my house, and it's gone so smoothly over the last month that I've been doing this, from
Mm-hmm.
getting prepping my house, getting it listed on the market, working with the realtor, to finding a buyer, getting through the inspection process, and so now we're through that, and we're expected to close on the 18th. I am changing nothing about really anything. Just
Mm-hmm.
I'm staying on track with not shaving or pretty much anything in my life. It's all staying the same until after this house closes.
Oh, really? Holy shit. So you're going to grow out like a full beard by the time you're done with this.
Probably, yeah. But then as soon as it's done, I'm shaving because I'm quite over it.
You know, what's funny is I just literally, the facial hair that I had today, and good God, it doesn't grow like yours. It was finally starting to get to me, and I finally just took it all off today. Just took the trimmer, buzzed it all off. But I had like probably about an inch and a half of growth, which for me was since December. So, shit. I mean, for you, what, a month?
This is like a little over a month.
Jesus Christ. Well, there's no doubt that you have any Nordic, ancestry.
Yeah.
That's definitely true. Jesus Christ. So what's been going on, man, aside from selling your house the last couple of weeks since we've been away?
That has been the extent of everything that's been going on with me. Um, getting my other house, this house I was selling, getting it prepared and getting everything fixed and all the touch-ups, painting, putting in new baseboards,
Mm-hmm.
making sure everything works properly, dealing with last-minute issues. We unplugged the washing machine and there was a leak and we had to shut the water off and get that
Oh,
fixed.
shit.
So it's just been dealing with that, listing it, and then negotiating with a buyer on things. And then, fortunately, during the inspection, the inspector came with a bunch of things wrong with the house, but the buyer just made it, said he wanted the windows fixed, basically. There was a cracked window and a cracked mirror, which I'm getting fixed anyways, so that's not
Yeah.
an issue. It seems like people buying houses are not really in any position to make demands. So,
That's very true.
and I'm making a huge profit on this house. I've owned it for 3.5 years, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm selling it for $93,000 more than what I paid for it.
What was funny is our conversation the other day was you were telling me that there's no capital gains tax when it comes to selling a house after because you've lived in it and it's your primary residence and you've lived there for 3 years.
And
And
I think it has to be less than $250,000, what you profit.
well, what was interesting is I was looking this up and I wasn't looking at the source, like the actual IRS tax code, because I don't know why the fuck you'd want to do that in the first place. But if you've lived in the same house for 2 years, you don't get any capital gains tax if you decide to sell it, which is wild. Which is starting to make me think that I want to go ahead and sell this place. But we're pretty complacent here out in the middle of nowhere, kind of south Salt Lake City. I mean, I am. I'm definitely am. I mean, like I was telling you, right? I could walk, I could run right up into the mountains over here, and it's like the middle of nowhere, almost like Parker. So I love it.
Well, you can do what I did. I'm literally renting a house a mile away from my other one.
That's so funny. You and a couple other guys, right?
Guys I work with.
So it's not the same couple that you were living with. It's completely new people.
Nope, she got pregnant, so that wasn't really an option. So they
That.
went into to live with one of their parents.
Oh shit.
So yeah, and then so one of my roommates I'm living with him, and then another guy from work.
Mm-hmm.
I was planning to wait until after I sold the house to find a place to live. I was thinking about just getting a trailer and just
Yeah.
laying low and see what happens with the market.
Remember that?
But it was just too impractical to live in the house while it was
Sure.
being shown. So I just decided to find a place to live, and thankfully, it's worked out every step of the way.
Mm-hmm. Are
First
you?
house I found a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, so we don't have to share bathrooms.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome, actually.
Listed the house. It sold immediately, and
Jesus Christ, that's
yeah, so
wild.
it's I don't have to pay rent and a mortgage for too long. It's going to be just March 1st is going to be the only overlap there, really.
The only thing that I ended up doing, well, I actually did two big things recently. The first, at least towards the home, is I've refinanced my house for the third time in a year and a half, like since I've owned this house. I was at 4.5%, and I was paying an ungodly amount, and now I'm at 2.875. And every time you refinance a house, you skip a payment. So it's like I've had three skip payments on this house, which is wonderful. And then it's also been incrementally lower and lower. And now on this last refinance, I just got rid of the PMI. So all the insurance that you have to take if you don't own more than 20% of the house. Well, now since all the equity's built up, we own like 21 or 22% of the house. So now it's like, okay, get that shit off and let's move on with our lives. And that was, I mean, the guy that we use is awesome. He doesn't really lower the rate as much as you could, like 2.5 instead of 2.87, but he doesn't like add more to the loan, which a lot of people do. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's like we'll get you down to 2.5 if we add an extra 10 grand to the loan, and I'm not about that.
Well, they'll probably just keep reducing the rates indefinitely. It's creating such an artificial demand for houses, and that's why one of the reasons
Oh,
why housing prices are skyrocketing. And I think it's only a matter of time before this blows up in everyone's faces.
yes,
And
yeah,
especially with there's a huge debt bubble. Our economy is just so infested with debt, and really just based solely on taking money from other people and spending it on what you want. It's
yeah.
only a matter of time until that explodes, and all these things that derive their value from the ability to create debt it's gonna blow up, and all these the prices of everything, all these assets, like they're all going to collapse.
Yeah, no, well, that's fascinating you say that. So we were talking about this in the car the other day when I was talking to you, and I wanted to save it for this conversation. But crypto, right? I mean, there's so many out there. We got Bitcoin, we got Litecoin, we got Ethereum, we got Dogecoin, which I just bought a shit ton of. What's your favorite? What's the best prospects looking forward? 10 years down the road, what do you see? What's in the crystal ball, so to speak?
My favorite crypto is XRP. That's my number one. I've got more money in that one than anything else. In December, the head of the SEC, Jay Clayton, that was Trump's appointee to head the SEC,
Mm-hmm.
announced that the SEC was issuing a lawsuit against the company that uses XRP. It's called Ripple.
Mm-hmm.
XRP is a you're going to be used as a bridge currency essentially to
Yeah.
facilitate cross-border payments and currency transactions and even other asset conversions. I don't want to get too in depth into what it's capable of,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Just high level.
I'm very excited about the prospects for what Ripple's doing and the long-term prospects of XRP and the XRP ledger.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Clayton, the head of the SEC, announced that they were going to be suing Ripple, the company, for selling XRP as a security. Which, if you're selling a security, it's just basically a security is stock in a company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they accuse Ripple of selling XRP to raise money for their company, which
Mm-hmm.
other companies have been doing, right? Other companies in the crypto space have been doing this.
Yeah.
So the bull market, crypto goes in cycles. So every 4 years, there is a run up of crypto throughout the year. So
Mm-hmm.
last time it was 2017, and then now obviously it's 2021. It started, XRP has been hovering at around like 30 cents a coin for
Yeah.
the last couple years, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
gone, so that's when I bought most of it.
Okay.
And the bull market started back in October, November, and XRP got up to like 90,
I
95
remember that.
cents. And then
Yep.
it dropped down to 70, and then it was hovering maybe 60 to 70 cents. I don't remember exactly. And
Yeah.
then Jay Clayton announced that they were suing Ripple, and the price dropped to 50 cents and then back down to like 25 cents, and then it stayed at 30 for a while. Now we're back up to 50 cents.
Oh,
So
wow. I didn't
I
know
th-
that.
I think things are turning around, especially now that people are seeing that the lawsuit is not sound. Jay Clayton announced they were dropping this lawsuit and then retired a few days later. He, it was really, the timing of it was really suspicious. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. I'm kind of, there's something more to it than just the SEC wanting to do this, right? Like, because it is such a ridiculous claim.
That's
And
fascinating.
the SEC is going to lose, but at no point has anyone been able to find the SEC going after an asset that wasn't involved in major criminal activity. They tanked overnight a lot of people's savings in that.
Yeah.
A lot of people's investments, rather, in that
Yeah.
in XRP. And
That-
it's really unprecedented that were to happen.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating about any type of security. I mean, cryptocurrency, obviously shares, right? GameStop, that's the big one, right? Where everyone just wants to buy it, just to buy it, right? It's kind of the funny thing about the stock market. It's pretty much the share will increase based on demand of who wants to go ahead and buy it and will continue to buy it versus the people that will go ahead and sell it. Um, And I always find this really funny, like human interaction part of it, where it's like, okay, I want to go ahead and buy as much as I want. And the point that I'm getting at is the congressional hearings with the guy. I don't know if you've seen him, Deep Fucking Value, Keith Gill from Wall Street Bets, right? He got subpoenaed. He testified in front of Congress this week, and his testimony, at least his statement, was, I mean, it was wonderful, right? He was like, I like the stock. I bet my family's fortune on it, but I felt comfortable with it. And the thing that kind of gets me is, I always seem like kind of the optimist most of the time, and then when I saw this actual market manipulation between the hedge fund Melvin, right, Melvin Capital, that pretty much told the Robinhood CEO stop trading because it's like thousands of retards like myself just buying up like GameStop stock. I thought that was wild. I mean, it really showed that even the SEC or any of these other agencies couldn't really step into this kind of corporate regulation as well, and kind of cronyism, which is just wild to me. And to my point, I think cryptocurrency is going to be kind of a linchpin there, just because it's like, okay, well, I don't want to go ahead and invest in your shares, your security, your stock, or whatever. I just have a whole fuck ton of cryptocurrency that I have the ability to go ahead and use at all these different online vendors, right? One thing, though, that I wanted to bring up was Dogecoin in particular. Robinhood apparently is one of the biggest whales, as they call it, with Dogecoin, and they own like 1 billion Dogecoin, and there's like 5 billion Dogecoin. So they own the wallet. So when I go to buy Dogecoin on Robinhood, for example, as I did, it's not mine. I don't have my private wallet, all that stuff. I mean, like, have you seen that? What do you think about that? I mean, do you want Robinhood to burn, or do you think, they should stay around in the marketplace?
I don't know if I'd want Robinhood to burn, right? It depends on, like, were they do they actually believe that this is investing for the people, or were they forced to by some sinister higher ups? There's a clear merging happening between corporate America, the U.S. government, like when I say U.S. government, it's Congress in particular, and even the regulatory agencies. Like, they're all there to protect corporate interests, especially over the last year.
Yeah.
I don't know what the philosophy is, the true philosophy is behind the people who run Robinhood, but so I'm not really comfortable saying like whether they should be forced to close. I think they definitely should have stood up to whoever is giving them the squeeze, if that's what is going on. The situation is entirely unacceptable. This was about protecting the rich who do manipulate markets and do the exact same thing to other people.
Yeah.
And I find the whole situation to be unacceptable. And the SEC is not going to look out for the people who were screwed out by halting trading. The elected officials for the most part aren't. AOC actually did come to the defense of the Redditors, but Elizabeth Warren didn't, which is no surprise.
Yeah.
And then Ted Cruz and AOC kind of had this like
buddy
thing, or Ted Cruz at least tried to extend a hand, and then she's like, "No, you advocated to have me killed or kidnapped or whatever."
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is a ridiculous, not
claim.
True claim at all. Not true whatsoever by any stretch of the imagination. With regards to, with all that, like, people should be in jail absolutely for it, and then like seeing billionaires cry about market manipulation on TV. I don't know if they really just don't understand, right? Like the whole narrative that's been built up over the last 50 years from the elite being able to control the flow of information has collapsed entirely.
Yeah.
So for them to sit out here and try and manipulate us and make us sway our beliefs on this is laughable, because we know what's really going on. We have access to every piece of information in existence. Even if we have to do a little digging to wade through reality and what's being pushed by an agenda, we can find out what's true and what isn't. And for them to sit here and still trying to control and manipulate reality is hilarious, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's so absurd.
No, it is absurd. And the term that I came up with, I was going to share this on the podcast, was billionaire cuck. And the reason why I say this is you'll have opinions from people that, do not have that much money. And they'll agree with kind of the sympathy of a billionaire or a millionaire, right? Where it's like, why should we get taxed more? And you'll see like these democratic tax plans, and some of them I don't entirely agree with, but then you'll see like taxing the rich, right? The top 0.001% or whatever it is. And the idea of having somebody that, net worth might be $50,000 or $100,000 or less, agree with somebody like that, it like just blows my mind. Like, you will never in your lifetime, like if I were to stack $1 billion on your lap, I would kill you, because it would just be, the weight of it would crush you, and probably your house or your trailer that you're living in, right? So the thing of seeing that on social media, it absolutely blows my mind. It's like, why are you advocating for something that you'll never get, never see, or never really have a taste of? And I mean, I just don't get it. Is it because of the Republican Party? Oh, and speaking of which, the last time we talked was right before the protest at the Capitol, or it might have been right after, wasn't it?
I think it was right after. I think we touched on it in our last one.
We did, yeah, and we kind of talked about that a little bit. I just think the idea, the Republican Party ideals, I just don't think we're going to see a Republican Party, working as effectively as it did the last since the Civil War, 102, I guess that'd be 200 years almost now. I don't think we're going to see a Republican Party like that in the future. I think we're going to see a split of the Republican Party. Do you?
Oh, certainly, I would say. There's kind of an interesting split happening, right? The Trump base of the Republican Party, and even a lot of like the libertarians and non Trump people, and then there's like the like the traditional conservatives, the people, they might be more religiously conservative, or just identify with being Republican because that's the way they were raised, or any number of traditional Republican values. I think there is definitely going to be an ideological split, and I think if so let's look at like Bernie Sanders with the Democrat Party, right?
That's exactly
Bernie
what I was
Sanders
thinking
base,
about.
right?
2016.
Like, they all, like Bernie Sanders and the majority of his base, not all, but a majority.
Yeah.
Once Bernie dropped out in 2016, they went for Hillary. despite the
Yes.
fact that she's a horrible human being. Same thing with Joe Biden, right? Like, I've got a
Yep.
friend who's a hardcore Bernie guy. He's still trying to convince me that Joe Biden doesn't have all the legitimate criticisms that they throw at Trump. Like, he's a good guy, he's a decent guy, he's overcome the stutter. Like, that's not a valid take. But like, they're falling in line for the most part, and that's why they're able to stay unfractured.
Yeah.
But again, even looking at the election, like, they didn't do great. They took
Yeah.
the Senate, they took the House, but they lost a lot of seats. They took the White House, so it's interesting from that dynamic. Back to Republicans. If they split right, when I say right, if they split correctly, I think they could draw in a lot of the libertarian base, especially if they adopt seceding as a platform or some kind of more conventional states' rights platform,
Yeah. Get
or
rid of, like, the
especially
federal system.
like anti-corruption, anti fixing election issues, things like that. And I think going forward, it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think definitely there is going to be a split. I wouldn't say it's going to be the death of the Republican Party, but Trump is not going anywhere. He is.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's going to end up, but he's going to still be fucking with that elite in the Republican Party. I'm not entirely convinced that the Mitch McConnells and the other like leaders in the Republican Party are not totally in bed with the leaders in the Democratic Party, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, right? They're the same
Yeah.
kind of people, the Mitt Romneys and the Paul Ryans and Mitch McConnell's. Like, they're all the same, right? And they just like
Yeah.
to pretend. And then where it gets different is like Donald Trump is not the same as those Republicans. They hated
Yeah.
Donald Trump, and they
Yeah, they
only
did.
pretended to play nice because it served them politically. And now, when it came time to back Trump, they all turned their back on him.
Oh, for sure.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's very likely that the base of the Republican Party, if they kind of gravitate towards this Trumpian base, and even just not even a pro-Trump, but an anti-establishment Republican, form around that core ideology, they can grow into something pretty significant.
No, I agree. Well, as I see it, right, and I agree with you about the Bernie Sanders take. I mean, in 2016, after that election, I was just thinking, like, okay, Hillary lost. It's like you're going to see this schism between the Bernie bros, right? And then you have everyone that voted for Hillary as well. And that didn't happen. I mean, and it really didn't happen because Bernie Sanders didn't get up and be like, fuck those guys, right? No, Hillary's a horrible person. Joe Biden sucks. And because he didn't did that, he didn't do that, and he said he supported, both Hillary and Joe Biden. Now we have this, and honestly, I mean, his position as one of the best memes of 2021 is just a great position to be in. Also, being a senator of a pissant state in the north, um, which is true. You have 500,000 people in a state. Who cares? But on the other hand, right, with the Republican Party, what I'm starting to see is obviously you're going to have like kind of the hardcore kind of, I don't know, not like Tea Party, but some sort of party for Trump, right, Trumpians. And then you'll have the more conservative Republicans, right, Mitch McConnell and everybody else that you just talked about. And then you're going to have the independent party. And the thing about the independent party, and obviously that's my party, is we just don't have anybody in such a high place, even though we might have the most amount of voters registered for the independent party, right? We don't have any type of I mean, I don't believe Bernie Sanders is independent, right? I know
He's an independent who caucuses with the Democrats.
Okay, so that's it. So you have Bernie Sanders, but if I were to really put Bernie Sanders into like a real human, like, okay, he is either an independent or a Democrat. He's a Democrat every time. So what is he an independent about? Like, what does he believe on the Republican Party side that he would warrant himself to be independent? I have no idea.
Nothing, absolutely nothing, right? Like, he uses that, I think, as cover to deflect from some of the more corporate interests of the Democratic Party. But
Mm.
nothing undermines criticism for Trump and Trump supporters like praise for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Barack Obama. Like, these aren't good people. Their policies have had devastating consequences on real people. All the criminal justice issues have been a result of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and,
Hmm.
and so for him to take an anti-corruption charge and then and an anti-corruption stance rather, and then not go after people in his own party, it makes him highly partisan and not and not I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but a hypocrite certainly.
Just on the same. Well, the thing about I want to talk about Donald Trump here for a second because one of the things that I was hoping for, and I mean, he was the loose cannon, and that's why we all liked him. He was the loose cannon. He said what he wanted. He wasn't part of the traditional kind of swamp, although he brought his own swamp. Um, the one thing that
Fuck
really
EJ
just
Clayton.
pissed, yes, yeah, exactly. The one thing that really pissed me off about him that would have like helped me wrap my head around liking him again was not pardoning Snowden. That drove me nuts. I couldn't fucking believe he didn't do that.
When it comes to the things that Trump didn't do that he campaigned on, like ending wars, I look at the Russiagate investigation and how
Mm-hmm.
serious that was. He and his family were investigated, and in the
Mm-hmm.
public eye, a lot of people, like the media especially, were tried to sell the people of this country on Donald Trump's guilt as a traitor, which is punishable by death. So, and
Mm.
him, not only him, but his children. Imagine being in that position where you're trying to end wars, which kind of like the whole elite running the world, like that's their scheme, like to
Mm-hmm.
keep control is these endless wars and kind of
Yeah.
American imperialism and bringing about this new kind of globalist mindset where they get to control every human being on Earth. Like that's the
Yeah.
goal. I'm convinced.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, he was not able to get to do a lot of the things I think he would have liked to do. You can question his motives for doing things like ending wars, but I have no doubt if he could have, he would have ended the war in Afghanistan and Iraq and every other one and brought all the troops home. But he couldn't.
Mm.
He had to align himself with shady people, the swamp and Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr and all these
Mm-hmm.
people. They're so sketchy and who were really behind the scenes working against him. And so he
Hmm.
wasn't able to do a lot. And I think at the end of the day, like after everything had transpired,
Mm-hmm.
like he made some kind of deal to leave him and his family alone if he didn't pardon Snowden, Assange, and Ross Ulbricht.
Shit. Wow, that's wild. No, well, whenever I kind of hear that, I always think of Dwight Eisenhower's like last thing that he said as he was coming out his last speech, talking about the military-industrial complex and how like insane that could get. Which obviously we have a military-industrial complex now. I don't know exactly how much of the GDP that contributes to it, but when you kind of think of, the what was our nickname in the Second World War? The arsenal of democracy, because we could just like take a shit ton of Boeing factories, and instead of like generating civilian aircraft and commercial aircraft, we just started churning out B-29s, B-17s, B-24s, all from there, which is just an absolute crazy thing. But if you look at Boeing's kind of divisions today, they obviously have their commercial sector, which isn't doing the greatest, right? Taking airplanes and crashing them into the ground isn't the best kind of policy when it comes to building aircraft. But they also have a specific division, and it's a permanent division, right, for military operations. And just like think about that, right? You have this, like, think 100 years ago. It's 1921, and we're having the same conversation, and it's like, hey, could you imagine Boeing, this aircraft company, having a permanent military arm? In the American mindset, 1921, the economy was going good, didn't really suffer that many casualties in the First World War. It's like, are you fucking crazy? No, just build up the commercial civilian side and just have them start pumping it out and buy a bunch of shares in it, right? So it is kind of wild to me that we have many companies today where, they'll have their civilian commercial portion, and then they'll have their, military weaponry, aircraft, whatever else. And I think, it kind of goes to having a constant, like, you have the Cold War where it's like you have to be ready at a moment's notice, which, obviously helped us, landing on the moon and all that shit. But um, why do we still have it? Why at these companies do they still have it? And the answer is because we still have the military industrial complex of these kind of entrenched conservatives and Democrats, Joe Biden, Mitch McConnell. They'll be like, yeah, we should send these, military contracts to Boeing, even though, why the fuck do we need an F-35?
Hillary Clinton, I don't know if you remember this, in 2016 was talking about setting up no-fly zones in, I'm pretty sure it was Syria, and shooting down any Russian aircraft that entered that airspace, which would for sure have started a war with Russia.
Yeah.
And people had the balls to accuse Donald Trump of being a risk of starting World War III. Like, Hillary Clinton is the biggest war hawk. We would be in a war in Libya, in Syria, in Iran, in North Korea right now if the elite had their way. What they didn't count on was the rise of the internet and people looking into these wars and seeing that they are bullshit and pushing back against them. Like, the elite are not used to like the media putting out information on their behalf and then having people be disregard it or disbelieve it.
Well, I think back on George Orwell's, the book you had to read in high school, 1984, right? Hopefully everybody read that at some point in their life. But talking about, I watched this video, and I can't remember what it was, but two individuals were talking about it and then laughing about the fact that, well, we already got a phone in our pocket, so they're already fucking listening to us, right? So we have that down in 1984. And then now we have doublespeak, which is the cancel culture, right? And what's funny about the doublespeak or the cancel culture is you'll start to see people that are of the same, of the same mindset of canceling people that are going to go ahead and get canceled themselves, right? An example, Kendall Jenner recently. I know it's a horrible example. I saw it on the news yesterday, but she was making a tequila brand. And she was it was pretty much like, oh, that's cultural appropriation that you're making a tequila brand and you're white and whatever else. And my mind immediately went to Sammy Hagar.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I mean, he makes one of the best tequilas on the planet. Was that cultural appropriation? When did he make that tequila? In the 80s? I would imagine it was the 80s. Or was that
I think
90s?
it would have been in the 90s, I'm pretty sure.
But that's the idea. But anyways, they didn't even bring up Sammy Hagar out of all the other people that had made tequila recently, because of course, nobody can kind of make that link now because it's not relevant today. But she's a female woman that started a business, and she's being called out because of she's not Mexican, and it's like, holy shit! Like, even females who were the minority are getting shit on now. And it's just wild to me. Because now it's going to be, you're going to see an Indian person from the fucking Parker Res that's going to do something good, and they're going to be like, whoa, hey, you're appropriating, Brazilian people with this business. And it's like, oh my God, Jesus Christ. And anyways, just getting to the point of 1984 of military-industrial complex, the government being able to listen to you at all times in doublespeak. There's three. Well, I guess it was really constant wars, doublespeak, and military industrial complex. Well, the other one. But anyways, to my point, we're starting to really get to that point. And I'm always wondering to myself, what would George Orwell think at this? Would he be sad? Or would he just be like, I knew this was going to happen?
I think probably that one.
That he knew it was going to happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, there have been people talking about this going back like to 9/11. Alex Jones was one of the first people talking about everything we're seeing happen today. The mass surveillance, the Patriot Act, the wars leading to what we're seeing now, endless and globalization. And really, I think I've heard some interesting theories with regards to cancel culture and things like that. It seems one of the theories is that people are not comfortable with everything being good. They need to fight for something. And so when you look around and you really don't have any legitimate issues, you have to make things up.
Yeah.
I really never thought this was a problem until I actually encountered people that believed in these kinds of ideals, and that's when it kind of started to frighten me a little more. But it's not the vast majority of people, and I think that's another thing where they're just overplaying their hands, and people just naturally are becoming more tolerant, more accepting of others, no matter who they are, what they believe, and I think that's going to continue. But I think as these loud, obnoxious social justice warriors continue to be loud and obnoxious and make demands that are completely unreasonable and interfere in people's lives, and especially when you see things like advocating the state take people's children's because of the way that the parents are raising them. I think people are going to just more and more disregard that, and I think that's coming to a larger extent on a societal level, really, with regards to laws, unjust laws, and the government making demands that and having no regard for how those affect people. So I'm kind of optimistic about it. I don't think this is going to be able to sustain long term, but I do think there is a large, like the people on the left, like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, the people who pretend to care about these issues. For them, it's about control and a means of control, and that's why I think they advocate it more than anything. And I think that kind of thing will continue from that standpoint. And I think it probably will get worse. But again, like, this level of control cannot sustain as technology advances. And this goes back to crypto as well, right? There's a whole new financial system taking place because of the strict control of the dollar being used to wage wars and keep oil propped up across the globe. And so I think certainly as the control tightens, the ability to control and the need to control will the need to control will increase, and the ability to, as you increase the need to, will decrease. And I think it's poised for a major collapse of all these old power structures that we've got in place now. But certainly with regards to back to like crypto, right? With the dollar is used as a mean, like the U.S. forces countries to pay for oil from other countries using the dollar, and that's why it gets its value pretty much. And we use the SWIFT system, the payment system, to bully other countries into submission. That's how we impose sanctions on other countries and trade restrictions and things like that. And so again, that's more that can't sustain. But with regards to crypto, what we're seeing now is like a whole new financial system giving rise, and that's what all these different cryptos are. Back to Dogecoin, right? This is what I wanted to touch on earlier. I forgot.
Yeah.
I like cryptos that have a use case. Right now, it seems like Elon Musk is adopting Dogecoin because he likes it, because it's giving a middle finger to the SEC, who he hates. Yeah, it doesn't really have a use case, but it could be used as a medium of exchange in whatever new financial system happens. But
I just think of it as another currency, effectively, like a Bitcoin or like a dollar or a yen or whatever else. It's just going to be a new currency amongst all the currencies, unless we can merge them all together, which I'd be fine with too.
And it certainly could be, but you still have to deal with the ability of the government and the SEC and the Treasury and whatever other bureaucratic nightmares are out there waiting to regulate. Yeah. You have to worry about them clamping down and regulating the on and off ramps. So
very true.
They could easily come in and say, you've owned Dogecoin, it's fine to own it, but we're going to come in and no bank is going to let you bank with them if you sell your Dogecoin. But they're not going to let you transfer that fiat into your bank account or whatever.
Yeah. But there's always, and that's the beautiful thing about capitalism, though, is there's always going to be one that says, "Oh hell yeah," even if it's outside of the country. You know what I
And
mean?
that goes back to like XRP. After the SEC announced that they were suing Ripple and they were going to try and deem XRP to be a security, a bunch of exchanges stopped selling it. You couldn't after they said you've got until January 18th or whatever it was to buy or sell all the XRP you need. We'll hold it on the exchange, but you can't buy or sell it anymore. And there's a couple that are still allowing you to buy and sell it. But during the last run up we had a few weeks ago, those exchanges are smaller, and they crashed when it started rising in price. So I think back to control, right? Like this is going to the more they try and control, the less they'll be able to. And that's, I think, is going to be the key. It may take a little while. There's going to be certainly some more clamping down on us and our lives, but it's not going to sustain.
As a thought experiment, and I was thinking of the man in the high castle, kind of going back to the military-industrial complex. When I think about it, and I think about George Patton, right, the general during the Second World War, and then we also look at I can't remember his name in the Pacific, MacArthur, right? MacArthur, and of course this was during the Korean War. He wanted to go ahead and nuke communist China, and of course in the Second World War you had George Patton, which after they had beaten the Nazis in 1945, he was advocating for effectively invading the Soviet Union. And I mean, he was right in the fact that, well, hell, we're going to be fighting them anyways. That was kind of his ideal. And he eventually died, which again, he talked about conspiracy theories. Maybe somebody killed him while he was in Berlin. I don't know. It says he died in a car accident. But what would, if we did a man in the high castle kind of scenario, but where the United States also invaded communist Russia, and then, of course, Poland and Ukraine and all the Balkan states, and then also China as well. So you kind of had this society or this world where, the culture of Japan, which is like a client state of the United States, right? Unconditional surrender, we're going to go ahead and occupy you no matter what, fuck you. But the same with the Soviet Union, but also China and Germany, obviously Germany being occupied. I wonder what type of government that would turn into. Would we still be a democracy? I think today we'd still be a democracy, and all those countries would be democracies and capitalist. But I mean, would there be any different type of power structure? Would trading be more lucrative? Would it be less lucrative? I don't know.
We came in and invaded
in 1945,
Soviet Russia. Would we annex them as a country of our own, or would we free them and let them become a democracy?
We would free them and let them become a democracy, but of course, by us saying free them and become a democracy, it's like
we've got a large military
Japan.
presence there.
Yeah, exactly, like a client state. And Japan definitely was. Get rid of the emperor's power, have a democracy, and we did that. We were like, the emperor means nothing now. Although in the culture itself, it meant a lot. But we did the same thing in Russia. And then, of course, in this scenario, 1945, China was like, oh my God, we love you guys. We don't want to be communists. Let's be a part of a democracy. So that's kind of the scenario. So back in the U.S., would it be like more of an oligarchy? Would we still have the same parties? I mean, I just wonder that all the time. Or would it be kind of like today?
I think one of the things that came about from the Cold War was this kind of like a lot of money went to advancing us technologically. Certainly with regard to the space race, I don't know how quickly we would have gotten to the moon if we did it all, if it hadn't been for us trying to beat the Russians there. And certainly that goes for a lot of the other things that I'm sure we did that we just don't really hear a lot about. You probably know about the history of a lot of that stuff better than I do. But in terms of our form of government, I don't know that it would have changed. I think it probably would have where we are economically probably would have come 20 years sooner. I think we are on the verge of a major economic collapse, and I think a lot of the debt that would have come from that war, that invasion, it would have been really tough to do. So if we were able to do it, I think it would have brought about our collapse and demise as a unified country probably 20 years ago.
That's interesting. Yeah, because again, when you look at other scenarios, and I brought this up in previous podcasts, where you have other scenarios where the United States has like a second civil war in effect because all the debt they racked up from the First World War. Because when we really lent out money to like Great Britain and France in the First World War, we were really hedging our bets, saying like, well, if we default on this debt and they lose the war, we're fucked, right? Or the United States would be fucked. And we're definitely not in that business, and we're definitely not in that timeline. But when I think about us, the military-industrial complex, what if it served its purpose in the Second World War, and we just wiped these people off the planet, and we had no Cold War, and we got rid of the military-industrial complex? Sometimes my mind kind of wanders into more of a socialistic outlook, right? Where you have a huge population in communist Russia, right? Which turns into a democracy. And, I don't think they would have had a problem with that, because they're like, okay, well, we were fucking peasants 40 years before that, and now we're communists, and now we're democratic socialists. I don't know. I kind of feel like that's what it would be like, and I just don't think the economy would be as good. So maybe I'm just talking myself out of this military-industrial complex, but
yeah,
as a thought experiment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if anyone's ever really brought that up. That I'm intrigued by this concept though.
Speaking of which, I want to go ahead and buy a typewriter and start typewriting all this bullshit out. So if you find a typewriter, let me know. I need to try to find a solid one. I just don't like writing on my computer because I think of it as work. But if I were to get a typewriter and I do it somewhere else in the house, I don't know. It's just a different mindset. So
interesting. So what would you be typing on the typewriter?
Oh, these ideas, these kind of stories. What if George Patton decided to invade the communist Russia? What actually?
So you would just play those out on your typewriter?
Yeah, and then just all short stories, and then if anybody wanted to read them, fine. I'd actually transcribe them. But I guess kind of like taking these kind of thoughts onto here first, and then onto an actual typewriter to type out. So, anyways, that's kind of what I think about the military-industrial complex. I know I'm really talking about that, but I mean, quite frankly, getting to the moon, doing all this other bullshit that I was talking about earlier, I just don't think we would have had it today. So I don't know if it's good or bad. But most of the time, I just kind of see the corruption from politics today and the entrenchment of politicians, right? Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell. And speaking of Ted Cruz, he totally fucked himself this last week. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that. It annoys me because I see him do shit like that, and it's just like, I don't really know what he could have done. I get the argument, you're getting your family to safety, but it's not a good look, and I see why people are upset. But then when I see leftists criticizing him, I was like, who the fuck are you to criticize him? Okay, you've been praising, you voted for Hillary Clinton, you voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You have no business to judge them or the people that vote for them or advocate them. You have no idea. So when I see people going after Ted Cruz, especially leftists, I want to push back on them. I want to defend Ted Cruz, and that annoys me. It's the same thing with Donald Trump, right? I want to criticize him, but when I see leftists criticizing him for the reasons they're criticizing him, I want to defend him. I have to defend him. In this case, it's a little different because I don't have anything to defend what he did, really. But I'm just annoyed that leftists are going after him, and they have no moral ground to stand on.
Well, you have Beto O'Rourke, or Beto O'Rourke. He was kind of the big, strong contender in 2016 for the Democratic Party. And I thought he was a good contender. He was very charismatic. But now he's kind of coming back and chastising Ted Cruz for this. And at the end of the day, one Texas politician making fun of Ted Cruz, it's like, no, fucker, right? Your logistics system, your power system, your water system, all this was fucked. And quite frankly, this is also your fault because you decided that you didn't want to put any impetus on fixing these things. So I don't
And
know.
when it comes to the storms and the blackouts themselves, like I see leftists talk about how there was all these
Mhm.
regulations that Texas didn't follow. They didn't weatherproof the or cold proof or whatever their infrastructure, the power structure.
Well, I mean, that's
And
both left, right, and
yeah,
center in
but
Texas.
they
Like,
have. I don't even know if that's true. Like, did they ignore federal regulations? That's the argument I'm seeing presented. But what federal regulations? I find it hard to believe that a bunch of leftists are suddenly experts in federal regulations to know that they ignored them, and that's why these blackouts are happening. Eric July pointed this out that blackouts were happening in other states where they're used to dealing with these kinds of storms, and they're far worse than what Texas is experiencing. And there's no talk about those states, none whatsoever.
yeah.
So why is
Well, it's
that?
because, well, I mean, population, right? Texas. I mean, in the thing that gets me is like I live in Utah, right? There's snow on the ground. There's snow on the ground right now. It's all melting now. But the idea here is I was like, man, that when growing up, you think Texas. It's like everything's bigger in Texas. The Texas Cowboys, like everybody, like oh, they're so cool. And like no, you guys get a little bit of snow and you lose your fucking mind, right? Your infrastructure system isn't set up for it. You guys are a bunch of autists. Like, fuck my life. I don't want to hear about you right now. But you're the third biggest state in the union, so I have to hear about you because everyone else is going to bitch about it because you didn't care about all the extra population influx in the infrastructure to support that. So when I see Beto O'Rourke, a democratically elected mayor, make fun of Ted Cruz, I'm like, no, dickhead. Like, yes, he did go to Cancun, he did something retarded, but at the same time, you didn't do anything to help the infrastructure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody outside, I mean, everybody, all other 49 states, even though other states were affected, you know, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, parts of Tennessee, right? Oklahoma, obviously, these other states were affected. You know, we're all kind of making fun of Texas right now. I feel like just because it's like, oh, you got a little bit of snow, ooh, losing your fucking minds.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's because you know the politicians in their state decided to say, you know, it's all right. Whatever you guys are doing today at the local water company or sewer plant or power production company, it's fine. The one thing that really got me was nuclear power production, because most of the state in Texas, their biggest, they run mostly on natural gas, which is fine. They have an abundance of it. But with natural gas, you need to get more of that commodity in order to run the generators at a higher amount, or at least hopefully from a layman's term. But if you had nuclear power, you know, you just go ahead and take some control rods out of the solution, and you just start generating more and more power, and not just a little bit of power, but a shit ton more power. So, kind of deviating over into nuclear power, do you think? What do you think about? What do you think about nuclear power? I don't even think I've ever asked you that question.
Overall, I'm a fan. Like, the technology is great. It's clean. The problem is storing the nuclear waste. And that's where, like, the nuclear power has been around a while, and the infrastructure for dealing with that has not been great. And it's caused a lot of problems and leaks and corruption and trying to cover up the leaks and what it's done to environments. And from that standpoint, I'm cautious, but our technology is better, and we do have the ability to store that. We have to store it for like 10,000 years or something, though. But our ability to seal that off and keep it contained is a lot better today. But we still need
Yeah,
to go back and deal with the waste from decades ago that we're not dealing with, and it's definitely I don't
that's
it's definitely
true.
causing
Yeah.
a lot of issues across the country and even the world. I'm certain of. And then when it comes to like things like Chernobyl and meltdowns and shit and like that is not like a
We
realistic.
just got to get we got to get HBO to stop making such good documentaries or you know miniseries about shit like this. Like, please stay off of the fucking you know nuclear power. If you could go ahead and talk about all the lives about being murdered by fossil fuels, great. You know, make something about that. But I mean, God, and as a sidebar, that documentary or miniseries, excuse me, was
It
amazing.
was, and
God,
I
it's
listened to
so
the
good.
podcast from the guy who created it. The guy who wrote that entire
Oh,
series, by the way, he wrote like a bunch of comedy movies, like Scary Movie 3 and The Hangover 2, and he's a comedy writer.
mm-hmm.
So for him to come out with this, it was pretty,
Create Chernobyl.
yeah. But I listened to the podcast. After every episode, they would release a podcast that the creator did, and he would go more in depth into the episode. I don't think his
Yeah.
intent was ever to criticize nuclear powered fuel.
No.
And
No, and I totally agree with that. I mean, it's just a great
yeah,
story.
certainly.
I mean, even uh, talking about like how that led to the downfall of the Soviet Union effectively, and being like, well, they don't release information, so they killed a bunch of their own citizens, right? Um, the one thing, getting back to nuclear power, having a fusion reactor, and this is something kind of thinking in the future, fusion instead of fission, right? We have fission, which splitting the atom, fusion, combining the atoms and creating the power or the power generation. Looking at the moon, and then ultimately looking at Mars, talking about the moon because the moon has a bunch of fusion related power source. I think it's helium 3, helium to the third. No, I'm not entirely sure, but it's right underneath the crusts on the moon. And speaking of all this, Elon Musk talking about bringing people to Mars by the end of the decade. I don't know if you saw this on the Rogan
I
podcast.
didn't see the most recent one.
Yeah, so he didn't get a high this time, which was a good. But he was talking about having people on Mars in the next 5 to 10 years. He was really saying the next 5 years, having regular flights to Mars the next 5 years. And I kind of think about that, and I just think new power sources. I mean, as you kind of take the human mind out of our planet and put it onto Mars or the moon or whatever else, I, I don't know. A lot of things kind of pop up. Politics. I don't know.
Elon Musk will be able to do whatever he needs to do to make that happen. He's pretty much, I think, been given the green light from all regulatory bodies and government, all
Oh,
levels
he
of government,
is.
to do what he needs to do to advance this travel, this space exploration agenda he's got.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certain he's already got some kind of alternative propulsion system already designed and created and built, and is probably even being tested already to make that happen, that we just are not going to know about for a while.
That's interesting that you say that. And probably I feel like corporate secrets are better kept than almost government secrets are kept. Mostly because I think you can use uh, a lot more bribes and a lot more kind of not oversight, but just kind of underhanded rogue plays in the corporate world than you can in the government world. And also, typically, you'll see individuals in the corporate world that are much more ruthless. I feel like than a CIA operative. I don't know. Maybe I've just been kind of in the corporate world too long. But getting back, kind of circling, kind of going full circle here, talking about Ted Cruz a little bit more and AOC when you're kind of getting to that. Um, Term limits. So, I mean, if we want to go ahead and try to save our kind of government we have today, I do not see a republic continuing on at the federal level, going down to the states and trickling into the states, unless we have some sort of term limits. I just don't see it.
I'm in favor of term limits. I just don't know if it's like the solution that everyone thinks it is, right? Like the whole thing with the deep state, right?
Really?
And like the
Mm-hmm.
shadow government, which clearly exists, as we've seen after the last 4 years. Like the people really running the country are going to continue to run the country exactly as they need to, and whether
Mm-hmm.
it's someone who's been in Congress for the first time or someone who's been there for 50 years, they can still manipulate them and get that control in just the same way.
Let's kind of put our tinfoil hats on here for a second, and when we talk about the deep state, how far back do you think does the deep state go? And I'm not just talking the United States, but also however long else. And like, what do those individuals look like? Are they like the Rothschilds of the world, or are they I don't know, just people we've never even heard of? Or are we talking about
So when it
lizard
comes to
people?
like the Rothschilds of the world, they're the ones who are actually running the world. I wouldn't classify them as the deep state. They're the world like elite. They're running
Mm-hmm.
things for real. The deep state are the
Yeah.
people in the intelligence community, the people, the military industrial complex, the ones who are the ones who got on national TV and admitted to attempting a coup against Donald Trump and just saw
Mm.
no consequences for it. They finished their terms and then get jobs as intelligence analysts for network news.
Yeah. 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 Of course,
Yeah.
contributor.
So the and they still get to hold their security clearances. They're still in touch with the people who are currently running things, and as we saw, like that's where the real problem is, and it seems like they will work really hard to win and to
Yeah.
maintain control over their agenda and
I
make
think
sure they can
anybody.
further their agenda.
No, and I agree with that. And I think anybody, even across history, like if this is what's been working for this amount of time, it doesn't matter who you can harm, maim, murder, or influence. They want to go ahead and kind of keep what's been working, which I think is a very human thing. So as we kind of break down, and I guess I'm a little confused when you talk about people that actually run the world versus the deep state. Is there like some sort of pyramid here that you see that's like, the Rothschilds, then you have the deep state, then you have X, and then you have us, the peasants.
Yeah, so there's like the people running the world are the people who own the central banks, the Rothschilds and whoever else, the Rockefellers, the big names that have been involved in all the conspiracy
Yeah,
theories that have risen over the last however many years. So they're the ones
yeah.
running the world, the Council on Foreign Relations, and they're the ones who set the agenda for the world and pull the strings of people. And then there's
Hmm.
the deep state are the people within entrenched in specific governments, and
Yeah.
there's certainly collusion between them, but the elite are above the deep state, and then
Hmm.
then with when it comes to elected officials, right? They do what the deep state says and what the elite says, right? So they're kind of the deep state and elected officials. I would say the deep state's higher up over here. Think about
Yeah.
when Chuck Schumer, Donald Trump, when he first got elected, was going after the CIA on Twitter for fucking up weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. He was just taunting them, right?
I remember
And this
that.
was one of
Yeah.
the things that really precipitated the Russiagate investigation. Chuck Schumer, senator from New York, Senate at the time, became Senate Minority Leader, said, like, you do not want to
Hmm.
fuck with the intelligence agencies. They have 100 different ways of getting back at you. And that's true, and that's a very honest moment from him. Where what did we see happen after that? RussiaGate and this huge investigation into him, and the media pouncing all over Trump and his family,
Oh.
and Trump was not able to move forward with much of his agenda.
Well, I think the most publicly facing kind of, um, I would say, deep state that we have today, or even the people that run the world, right, would be the actual medieval lords in Europe, medieval lords in the Middle East, and then even, the different dynasties in China in the old world. And of course, in the new world, they never, I mean, they would get to that, but not as much. But you literally saw people at the top. Like, here are the medieval rulers, and they were taught from birth that they were picked from God or Buddha or whomever else that you are here to lead, right? And I think that's just much more honest than kind of what we have today. And I know that sounds crazy and like, oh my God, am I advocating for some sort of, um, Jesus Christ, what is it called? Feudalism? But we kind of have it today, right?
And
I mean, we had
they're
Bush,
trying to expand that, certainly.
Bush Senior, Bush Junior. I would imagine Joe Biden's son is going to run for some sort of elected official in the future. But
I don't know about that anymore.
Yeah, right. This is the one thing. One of the big things that I give Joe Biden is, his son died, the good one, right? Bo, he died, brain cancer, veteran, this whole deal. And when we say the good one, I say the good one, right? I didn't know if there's anything bad with him. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and run for office. But it's the idea of like this kind of dynasty. And I'll say it again. I've said it before. I say it again. That was the big thing that I liked about Trump coming in was he wasn't a fucking dynasty. I didn't want any more political
He put an
dynasties,
end to
right?
two dynasties single-handedly: the Bush dynasty and the
Yeah,
Clinton
Bush's,
dynasty.
yep, and the Clinton dynasty. Yes, and I loved that. I was like, hell yes. Um, and getting back to my point that I was saying earlier, I mean, feudalism. It just seemed like we have a form of feudalism today. Like, am I ever going to be a billionaire? No, there's no fucking way. Like, if I started selling kilos of cocaine, I'd be maybe a millionaire in the next 10
If
years.
the dollar hyperinflates,
But,
that you might be a billionaire if you were to do that.
well, if I took all that money and I fucking put it into all these cryptocurrencies, yes. Um, but I don't know. It's like you have this form of government hundreds of years ago, which we seem as archaic. And I'm looking at it like, I don't know, it seems kind of more honest than we have today. We've got dynasties today. It's just they're elected.
And that's the whole sham when it comes to democracy, right? It's like, oh, you get to vote for the people who are making these decisions and ruling over us, so we're free. And it's so not true or accurate. Like, these people are getting off on controlling our lives and making us poor and miserable and reliant on them to live. They break our
Yeah.
legs and then give us a wheelchair and then convince they helped us. And
A
that's the scam.
billionaire
Yeah.
cuck. we're just cucking around. Oh man, are we at an hour
Yep.
already? Oh man, this one was a good
Yeah.
one. I felt we talked about more real world applications. I like that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end this. Let's have a word afterwards, okay?
Cool. Number
Number
three.
three.